The last man on earth sat alone in a room. There was a knock on the door. The story begins in a library filled with dusty books. Lola, Ward, and Eve embark on a journey that will change their lives forever. In this tale of friendship and fear, we follow these three friends as they stumble upon a book that unreveals their deepest fears and introduces them to a haunting presence named Timor. Lola has always carried the weight of a deeply rooted fear, the fear of death. For her, every shadow seemed like an indicator of her own end. Eve lived with the constant fear of abandonment, a fear that clung to her wherever she went, ruining her perception of relationships. And then there was Ward, tormented by social anxiety, where every gathering felt like a stage where he was bound to crumble. On an allegedly normal day, the trio met up in the university's library. Little did they know that their lives took an unexpected turn when they stumbled upon a mysterious book entitled Knock by Fredric Brown. The book contained an evil spirit within its pages. Unfortunately, this book would become the reason for a series of terrifying events that would challenge their very existence.
It was about 4 feet tall, and it looked like nothing on Earth. Nothing, that is, that had been on Earth until the Zan came there.
Although the book looked skeptical, Ward decided to open it anyway. Eve hesitated for a moment. Her hesitation was noticeable, and Lola nervously agreed. They opened the book with a sense of uneasiness. The haunted book had a spooky feeling to it that made their worst fears come to life. Talk about a lively book, right? This book had a ghost named Timor, who was shadowing the inner fears. He only popped up when the gang was in some serious, scary situations, and surprise, that was exactly when they faced their deepest fears. After having the weirdest encounter, Ward wakes up the next day to go to university, and he sits with a new group of people that he's not really familiar with, and starts feeling anxious and out of place. At that moment, he sees Timor standing right next to him. Ward starts trembling with fear and realizes that no one is aware of the ghost's presence except him. He runs away to a quiet place, and this is when Timor disappears. Eve experienced a similar situation as Ward. She also had a horrible day after getting a breakup text from her boyfriend of 4 years. Eve crawls into a corner and starts crying, wishing this was a dream. She felt scared and alone, and suddenly Timor appears in the distance. She is terrified and unable to move, and that's when her best friend comes and the ghost disappears. Lola, on the other hand, undergoes the most terrifying day out of the three of them. She goes to the bathroom and immediately feels like she was beaten to death as she sees herself in the mirror, bruised and bleeding from her eyes. She's terrified and is struggling to breathe, and this is where Timor appears, standing behind her in the mirror. Lola couldn't handle the pain and fear she was experiencing, so she fainted to the floor. When Lola woke up, she realized that it was all in her head. Ward, Eve, and Lola decided to meet up again to talk about their unusual experience while they spotted Timor staring at them. So they realized that Timor is only seen by them, and since he is symbolizing their worst fears, the only way he would leave is if they overcame them. Now when it comes to facing fears, you've got two kinds of people: those who face their fears head on and those who run away from them. Ward and Eve strongly belong to the first category. They were the fearless duo, the dynamic duo, the fear not squad. When Timor came knocking, they bravely took on their fears, showing them who's boss. And guess what? They managed to face their fears, so Timor was forced out of their lives, sending him packing like an uninvited ghostly guest. However, Lola's story took a darker turn. She didn't have the strength to confront her fear of death, and as a result, she found herself trapped into a nightmare cycle. Timor's haunting presence became her constant companion, driving her to lose her sanity. Lola was out of control and had the sudden urge to kill all her friends out of jealousy, thinking this would help her face her fears. In a desperate bid to escape relentless torment, she was placed in a mental institution, her once vibrant spirit now confined within its all-black walls. The last man on earth sat alone in a room.
There was a knock on the door. And the door opened.
Timor enters the room and sits next to Lola in bed. They start playing Hangman, a word game in which Timor selects a word that Lola must guess. The 4 dashes in the game were representing the word Lola.